I'm looking at you, Sandy. So this is the author. I always begin by acknowledging the traditional owners, and I do that wherever I go because I want to. But today I particularly want to acknowledge Clan. The resilience and the strength of the members of Clan have made me stronger since I first met you. I think about 11 years ago, I think, Leonie, that was... I got a phone call from my good friend Steve Hutchins, who we haven't heard from today. Steve was working in the Senate. Well, we think he worked in the Senate. No, Steve was a senator for New South Wales, and he met Leonie and had one of those life-changing experiences that tends to be. And in Steve's true generosity, he called me and said, "You need to meet this woman." Like, "You handle her, Claire." It wasn't quite like that, but it was a very special moment, and that was when we were doing a lot of the negotiation around the Senate Community Affairs Committee that we had. And, you know, despite all the bad press about being in politics, and there's a fair bit, and politicians, they're right up there with journalists and car salespeople in terms of respect and trust, but nonetheless, there are things that make your life worthwhile. And I think community affairs itself makes my life worthwhile. It will always be the most meaningful part of my job. But amongst the inquiries we've done, the one on people who are in institutions will remain absolutely entrenched on the minds of every senator who had the honour to be part of that. You might remember that when we actually had that report brought down, and then subsequently we said that the words that were never going to be used again was forgotten Australians, because no longer would the experiences of people who were through the institutional process, no longer were they ever going to be allowed to be forgotten again. That remains a trust element for us, and we'll continue to work with it all the way through. When Leonie sent me the book Broken by Sandi, this is Sandi Gamble, the author, it was particularly poignant because when I began to read the book, I realised that Sandi was exactly the same age as I am. And when you read her book, you can't help but think about your own life in comparison to that which you're reading. And there were points of togetherness in terms of... one of the things I love most about the book is that Sandi consistently through the book brings in music. It's important to her, and she quotes musical songs that were important to her at different periods of her life. And I knew every one that you mentioned I knew, but my experiences with that music was so different to yours, and that kind of summed it up to me. We know that everybody's experience is different. You can't talk about a group of people and presume that everything they've gone through is the same. So that when I read Sandi's book, there are elements in the book that I'd heard about before in listening to so many people who had been through institutions, but there are other things that were totally different. And I'm going to ask Sandi why she wrote the book, but I'm just going to start by reading out one of Sandi's favourite quotes. And I think it reflects so much for all of us. And it was not her own, it was from a guy called Ken Keyes Jr., whom I don't know. Who is Ken Keyes Jr.? No, we don't know. Obviously a very smart bloke. And his words are, "You are not responsible for the negative programming you picked up in childhood. However, as an adult, you are 100% responsible for fixing it." Now, I think those words can be truly reflected in Sandi's book, and she said she's really shy. I don't believe that, Sandi. And actually at the back are Sandi's partner and her son. And when you read the book, you'll know exactly how important those two men are in Sandi's lives. In fact, she said, the song "To Sir With Love," which everybody here of my age knows, you know, "If you promise me," that kind of thing. When you know that, Sandi actually says that her husband was the person who was the person in her life that made that come true. That's true, isn't it, Sandi? Now, that we practiced this earlier. Sandi, can you tell us, why did you write this book?
Okay. Let me just first start by saying thank you to Senator Moore for launching the book for me, and also to Leonie, who I will say has chased me down for 10 months to get this book launch to happen, as when I released it, I put it onto Amazon, and that was the last I wanted to do with it. They say when you finish a book, you should close the cover and walk away. Well, that's exactly what I tried to do, but anyway, I'm here. Thank you, Leonie. Next, I'd like to just thank my husband for all the tissues and all the cuddles and all of the therapy that he gave me along the way, because without him, the book would never have happened. It would not have been possible. Okay. Okay, so why did I write the book? In 1994, and I know that's going back a little bit, on the 13th of June to be exact, I sat down at a computer that was in my little bedroom, and I bashed out, I would say, a good 10 chapters in a couple of hours of my life. And then I looked at that and I thought, that is just so bad. That is just so, so bad. My father had died that morning, and I was so angry with him because of my life that that verbal diarrhoea, for want of better words, just spilled out onto the pages, and it became the foundation for what is now my book. But I went back and, of course, I revamped it, realising that as we grow older, we see things in our maturity that we missed in our childhood. And my mother and father, even though they did some terrible things, and that's why I ended up in care, really had no choices. They didn't have the ability and also the services that are offered to us today to fix their lives. My dad was a returned sailor. He was on the Aussie when it was kamikazed in the Second World War, and watched his favourite captain, Captain Duchesneau, die in front of him. He returned with post-traumatic stress disorder and all of the problems associated with that. And my mother, of course, well, she just fell to bits when Dad left and tried to commit suicide, and then went away and came back with a mental incapacity to look after a young child. So, hence I ended up in an orphanage, the Good Shepherds. The lovely Good Shepherds with the big laundry. 12 years old, I stood on a little fruit box and I pulled off sheets from a mangle that was so hot. I was promised that when the calluses grew on my fingers, I wouldn't feel them anymore. And they did grow. And the sheets were less hot as the years went by. But anyway, just going back to my book, I wrote the book not from a place of being a homie and not from a place of being in care, but more so it's a life story of how I got into care, the things that went wrong in my family's life to get me into that position in the first place. And then there's a little bit in there about being in care, but all of you have been there. So, well, sorry, most of you have been there, and you all know that story. But then what I really wanted to get across in the book, and I think that I've done that, is what happens to us after we leave care. We come out of care, we don't know how to catch a bus, we don't know how to pay our bills. God, I sat in a bloody house with no electricity for a week. I didn't know how to put it on. I had no idea, I had no life skills. And that's the legacy that these beautiful, caring people gave to us. Nothing. We were their slaves, and that was it. But anyway, that's the book, and that's why I wrote it. And I suppose I just want to say one thing, which is another favourite saying that I have, and it is very important to all of us, is that when you remove a child from their family, you erase a part of that child's life that they can never get back, no matter how old they are, because that family goes on and grows together, and you don't grow with them. And when you come back, it's not the same family anymore. It's not the one you left, and you can never get that up. So the people that you have been with in the home now become your brothers and sisters. And I'd like to say I love my family. Thank you so much.
Now you see why you need to read this book. As with so many books that are published in this way, Sandi had to self-publish, which is an inspiring thing as well in terms of having to do that. But the only way the book can get out there is if people buy it, Not so much the people in this room. We know, we've heard, we want to hear about Sandi's life, but we need to get people outside these doors reading these books. So go to your libraries, every library, go to your libraries and tell them about these books and ask them to buy it. That's how it works. You actually try and get the books out there. Happy birthday, Clan. 14 years, it's a fabulous birthday. You're getting there almost close to vote, not much longer. But in terms of the process, today's a bit of a historical day because we've had 3 books launched, 3 wonderful stories of people who have shared their lives with us. Get out there, buy them and make sure people read them. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to